I've been drawing comics professionally for about 25 years, ever since I was in school. Got my first job actually while I was in the master's program at SVA. My name's Russ Braun. I was born in Brooklyn, lived in New York almost all my life. My influences in comics, well, in art in general, started out early on. I was mostly a fan of Marvel comics growing up. So it was like the Spider-Man comics. For me, also, I was in the era of John Byrne and George Perez were the big two. And from that point on, when I was going into college then, I thought, well, it's time to put away comics and be, a capital A artist, the way I used to put it. So I was going to be a fine artist or an illustrator or something, as comic books were, even then, still not really considered a very mature art form. Of course, when I got into college, that's when comics really boomed into a huge art form that people were really respecting, and those are my major influences. Like Alan Moore comics, when I saw what he and Steve Bissette and John Totalman did in Swamp Thing, it was astonishing to me. It was amazing stuff. Miracle Man or Marvel Man, whichever way you want to call it, was the most influential to me as far as just storytelling goes. Watchmen, obviously, although that's not one of my favorites of his, I still just love it. I love what he could do with those books. And then more artistically, there was Bill Sienkiewicz and Frank Miller that were doing things with comics that I'd never seen done before, just like telling a story visually in a way that I'd never seen. David Mazzucchelli, also working with Frank Miller, was another huge influence for me. Batman Year One was sitting, the issues, individual issues, always sat next to my drawing table so that I could refer to them if I needed it. Any shot you need in comic books is in there. One page a day is easy for me, from beginning to finish. When I get the script, I can basically turn around a 20-page or 22-page comic book in 3 weeks, which I prefer to have a month, but 3 weeks is about the average I get right now. So, and there is 20 pages now. It used to be 22 pages was like the standard for the entire time I've been working in comics, and now it's 20 pages, so they can have a little more advertising in there. Well, my work desk is the same desk I've had since I was about 13 years old. My grandfather bought it for me. Both my grandfather and my father drew. They didn't do it professionally, but they were both very supportive of me being an artist. And when I got that drawing table back there, it made me feel like this is something. It made it feel professional. It's a tiny little table. Most people have a big giant, Formica thing, but I never really worked much bigger than comic board anyway. So yeah, it folds up. I can basically take it with me if I travel, and yeah, I love that old table. I'll never get rid of it. I had a teacher named Joe Orlando, who was just a brilliant comic artist himself. Worked up at DC Comics, and in class, he got to know my work and liked what I did, and said, "Why don't you come up and we'll see if we can get you some work at DC?" And I said, "Sure, that'd be great." And the first project he wanted me to work on was something called Ford Fairlane, and then Batman Venom came along, Legends of the Dark Knight. Andy Helfer was the editor, and he set up 6-issue miniseries, basically, in story arcs in Legends of the Dark Knight, all designed to then be collected as a graphic novel. So he originated the concept. I really do believe that. The story was there. It was written by Denny O'Neil, and basically after about a month and 14 pages of the comic, I turned it in and talked to Andy about it, and he said, "Oh, it's good. We'll just get a good inker, and it'll be fine." And I just said, I really want it to be great. So I asked if we could maybe get another layout guy. So Trevor Von Eden came on, and then the best thing to come out of the project, though, was that the inker was Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, who basically took what I gave him and not only enhanced it and embellished it, but added so much more life to the drawing that I didn't put in, that I should have put in. So little things like incidental detail. We used to sit down and talk about it. I got to meet with him like 3 or 4 times during the course of the book, and that was the fun part. That was the thing I loved to do. Have a little chat about basically how to do comics. And those are the most just absolutely invaluable moments to me in my career. And it really was, one of the best projects I ever got to work on, and still well remembered, I think. Well, I've worked with a pretty good variety of writers, some really, well-respected, well-known writers. It's hard to single anyone out except Garth Ennis. If I was going to show somebody a script, say this is the way to do a comic book script, I would show them what Garth gives me. And I worked with Garth Ennis on multiple issues of The Boys, 3 series of war stories called Battlefields, and the amount of information that Garth gives you is just the perfect amount. It's never too little, and it's rarely too much. So working with Garth has been just the greatest thing in comics, I mean, for me. Herd of elephants comes running down over the hill and attacks the caravan of gentlemen riding on camels, and you're just kind of like, okay. And that's panel 1 on a 7-panel page. And you have to figure out, how am I going to get that all in there? But that's the joy, that's the fun of comics, is that you can go anywhere, do anything, and ask anything of artists and writers, and they can basically get it out there and get it done. So in a short amount of time, sometimes way too short. But that's what we do.
Please listen carefully.